Now, if you think the media just reports what happens, well, buckle up. I know you guys like the term narrative laundering. Pretty brilliant, huh? Shout out to Sam Antar. So yesterday, he wrote an entire piece called Narrative Laundering. Basically, it's a technique where technically true information gets repackaged into a misleading story, one designed to protect political allies, discredit opponents, or both. Welcome to Nelly Miranda. So before we get into today's video, please make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Politico is back at it yet again. On June 2nd, they published a headline about a poll so flawed and so narrow that even the organization who paid for it didn't believe the results. At a first glance, that headline sounds like bad news for Andrew Cuomo, right? A major outlet is reporting that Democratic voters want someone else. But here's the problem. This poll wasn't conducted by Politico. It was paid for by the Working Families Party, which is a far-left political group in New York, and it was conducted by Upswing Research and Strategy, which is a progressive-aligned polling firm. Now, that alone doesn't make the data bad. But wait till you hear what they actually did. The poll sampled 600 Democratic primary voters, not 600 New Yorkers, not 600 general election voters, just 600 registered Democrats likely to vote in the primary. That's key, so pay attention. Because Cuomo isn't even running in the Democratic primary. He's running in the general election. So what did they do? They then took a subsample of 200 people from that pool of 600 and asked who they support in a general election matchup between Adams and Cuomo. Let me repeat that. They just used 200 people, all of them from Democratic primary voters, to make a sweeping claim about a general election. Now, statisticians will tell you that a sample that small, especially from a narrow group, produces a margin of error at least 7%, which means that the so-called lead that they claim Adrian Adams have over Cuomo is 41 to 34%, which is statistically meaningless. So it means nothing. And in fact, if you factor in the margin of error, this race could even be dead even or even tilted a little bit towards Cuomo. But none of that nuance made it into Politico's headline. Instead, they gave us this: Democrats prefer Adrian Adams to Cuomo. Now let's talk about intent. You might assume that if the Working Families Party funded the poll and Adams came out ahead, they'd endorsed her, right? Yeah, they'd endorse her. That would make sense. Nope. They endorsed Zoran Mamdani as their top pick, who, by the way, lost to Cuomo in the very same poll. Their second choice was Brad Lander, who also lost to Cuomo in the same poll. Now, Adrian Adams, who supposedly performed the best against Cuomo, somehow she ranked third. Somebody explain it to me. So what gives? How does Politico take a poll that even the sponsoring organization didn't believe and used it to push a headline that paints Cuomo as unelectable? Now, here's where the term narrative laundering comes in. Antar describes it like this. It's when someone uses technically true data, but presents it in a way that hides context and distorts public perception. In the financial world, it's called presentation risk. In media, it's business as usual, mislead the public and hope that they don't ask any questions or start thinking for themselves. This is exactly what we've been warning about. These so-called trusted institutions are not neutral arbiters of information. They are players in the game, scripting the story, choosing the cast, and rigging the results. Because they know that most Americans won't read past the headlines. So they make sure that the headline says what the party wants it to say, even if the data says otherwise. And this problem goes far beyond Cuomo, because this is the same tactic that is used to shape narratives around President Trump, RFK Jr., Ron DeSantis, and anyone else who is not falling in line with the progressive elite. Now, do y'all remember when polls proved Hillary had the 2016 election in the bag? Well, at that time, I was young and naive. I was drinking CNN's Kool-Aid. Hell, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't even like Hillary, so I sat that one out. But glad I was finally accepted to Common Sense University. Now, do you also remember when they told us that inflation was transitory? See? Same strategy, different spin. But let's talk about why this matters. Because polls are not just numbers. They shape campaign donations, media coverage, voter enthusiasm, and debate access. When a poll like this gets spun into a misleading headline, it has real-world consequences because it influences who gets taken seriously and who gets laughed off stage. And if you think Politico didn't know this, then you better think again. And Sam Antar makes a great point in his article. In financial fraud investigations, a CEO who knowingly signs off on misleading information gets held accountable, even if the numbers themselves are technically accurate. So, why does the media get a pass? Why are journalists not held to the same standard when they spin a story so far out of proportion that even the source posters back away? Now, if Fox News had done something like this, CNN would be covering it nonstop, shouting disinformation. It's propaganda. But because it's political and because the narrative hurts Cuomo, who the far left wants out, it gets a free ride? No, CNN, put them on blast like you would the Republicans. Because you do not have to like Andrew Cuomo. Because I know we all haven't forgotten what he did to Miss Agnes at the nursing home. But fair is fair, and this is not about him. It's about integrity and reporting. It's about the difference between the truth and manufactured reality, a lie. And if we do not hold the media accountable, they'll keep doing it. Because why wouldn't they? It works, and it has been working forever until people like you, people like me, start calling them out. Speaking of polls, let's talk about CNN and Trump. Trump's economic approval numbers have the liberal media scratching their heads. Even CNN's own chief data analyst, Harry Enton, couldn't hide his disbelief. And he was so dramatic with it. Watch.
Yeah, you would think after all of the waves, Kate Baldwin, after the last few months, the first 5 months of the Donald Trump presidency, right, the first 4 months of the Donald Trump presidency, that you expect that Democrats would have this massive lead on the economy. It ain't so. It ain't so. The party that is closest to your economic views, in November of 2023, it was the Republicans by 11 points. Now it's still within that range, still within that margin of error. Plus 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. How is that possible, Democrats? How is that possible after all the recession fears, after the stock market's been doing all of this, after all the tariffs that Americans are against, and Republicans still hold an 8-point lead on the economy? Are you kidding me?
Enton was practically begging Democrats to explain how on earth are Republicans winning the messaging war on the economy. By 8 points at that. This is after months of the media fear-mongering about a recession, after nonstop warnings about Trump's tariffs tanking trade, after screaming headlines blaming Trump for every fluctuation in the stock market, and yet Republicans are up. Well, Harry, it's possible that most Americans are living in reality and not reading Democratic press releases because people see inflation dropping, gas prices dropping, eggs are the cheapest they've been in forever. And they remember what things looked like 2 years ago under Biden and Harris. A hot ass mess. This isn't just about numbers. It's about credibility. And right now, Trump has it. The media has spent years predicting economic collapse under Trump. They said the tariffs would destroy trade and jobs would just vanish. They warned us of a looming depression the moment he stepped back into the Oval Office. And now, the numbers say otherwise, and even CNN has to admit that the Democrats cannot sell their own economic messages because their version of the story doesn't match reality. See, this is what happens when your entire strategy is panic, spin, distraction. But I digress. What is one headline you saw this week that seemed just a little too convenient? Let me know in the comments. Add links also so I can check it out. And as always, if honest commentary brings you value, Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe as it really helps support the channel. And tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.